Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and call the public budget meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Roll call, please. Deputy Mayor Campbell. Unmute yourself, Glenn, please. Yeah. Deputy Mayor Campbell.
Technical difficulty. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Present.
Councillor Humphreys.
Present.
Councillor Webster.
Present.
Councillor Carew.
Present.
And I'm present, of course. Confirmation of the public meeting agenda. Everybody's had it in front of them. I need a mover and a seconder to approve that, please. Councillor Carew. Councillor Webster. All in favor? Carry. Declaration of pecuniary interest. None being heard. And Hope, I'll ask you to take over with the purpose of the public meeting then, please.
Sure. So the purpose of this particular public meeting is to present the 2020 draft budget to the public as per our notice policy.
And the report of notice.
Notice of this public meeting was advertised in the Renfrew Mercury and as well as on the township's website. The draft budget packages were also placed on the website for to download, and paper copies were in the Dropbox. To date, we had one download of the budget meeting package, as well as only one package picked up in the Dropbox.
Okay, thank you. Delegations, but we don't have any. Staff report, the 2020 budget presentation. Hope, do you want to take it, please?
Sure. So just bear with me for a moment. I'll share my screen. Is everybody able to see that?
I can see it. I'm
Yeah.
down to 5 people though.
Yeah, it might minimize the amount of screens you see for us on the side. So when I'm done, you do see it? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So when I'm done, we'll all be back together on the screen as normal. So just some housekeeping items right now is I'll go through the entire presentation first, and then when we're back to a full screen, perhaps that's when we can address any comments or questions at that time. So first, before I begin too, I'd just like to thank council, committee members, and staff for all of their help and direction. It's been a trying time the last few months, but we've finally made it. So we're here and presenting for our first time virtually and live streaming on YouTube for our draft budget. So just quickly, the budget process is consistent of processes that we've always adhered to in the past, but we also did try something new this year. So firstly, what we do is we provide the managers with departmental budget request worksheets. They have a deadline that they need to submit these back into the office for staff review. Then we pre-populate the working budget papers, which then gets sent this year, which we did for each specific committee. They met and reviewed each departmental essentially line by line and looked at any kind of blips on the radar or new items that were being budgeted for. And then following that, with any further direction, we had a day-long budget workshop meeting with all of the departments again, with all of council and staff. And what was nice too, we had our general government committee public advisory members sit in that day-long budget meeting to help us further review and offered great support to council and staff. So from all those meetings and review with staff and council and committees, there was a consensus to go with a 2% levy increase after growth. And I'll give a little bit more information on that later on of what that 2% consists of. But just to give an idea, council and committee, they were presented in the past with the following reports: the 2020 departmental summary, the capital worksheets, the 10-year capital forecasting, reserve schedules, and the long-term forecast. So annually, the municipality relies on various funding sources from both provincial and federal levels of government. And without these recurring funding contributions, Horton Township would basically be struggling with any capital or infrastructure projects, like road rehabilitation, for example. And these funds, as you'll see in a later, in a few slides, have been allocated in the 2020 operating and capital budget. So just for information's sake, we've got a few of them listed here. So the first one is OMPUF, which is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. We see that that fund come in on an annual basis that we rely on for our operating portion of the budget. We've got our gas tax funds and our OSIF, which is the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund allocation. And last year we received our first, I guess, the only installment of the unallocated funding called the modernization funds, which can be used for finding efficiencies in service delivery for each municipality. So that's just a little quick summary of those. The township also practices long-term financial strategies to guide us when we're preparing not only the annual budget, but also forecasting the future. So our asset management plan is one of the financial tools used to guide the municipal decision-making process. And the township has undertaken a roads needs study in 2017, as well as updated that asset management plan in the same year. Also, staff and council review the 10-year capital forecast and continues to amend the forecast and utilize the information for the purpose of the asset management plan, long-term financial strategies, and the development charges study. And we continue to review that and amend it on an annual basis. They're essentially working documents that we use to guide us through the budget process. So in reference to the long-term financial strategies, this particular slide shows our 10-year capital forecast. This essentially, again, as mentioned, is a working document which is reviewed on an annual basis, and it forecasts which capital needs there are for each department in conjunction with the asset management plan, the roads needs study, and our lot development studies. So just for a quick example, if we purchased a tandem truck in 2018 and the determined life cycle of that particular truck is 10 years, we know that we're going to forecast that new tandem replacement in 2028. So we're going to forecast that and we're going to allocate funding for it so that we can go year by year and know that that's eventually going to come up. The top portion of this slide actually determines which revenue sources the items listed in each department would potentially come from. So it's all on an estimation, of course, and only defined specifically in the actual annual budget process for that particular year. So in 2020, you'll see our capital and our funding sources match with our budget and what our revenue sources, reserve schedule, and capital financing schedule. So you'll see that coming up in a few of the later slides. Some of the highlights in the 2020 budget for this year. We've got our new 3-year curbside recycling contract, which was just recently awarded. That contract started May 1st. I will go into a little bit more depth in that in a later slide. We've got some allocated funds for potential service agreement with the town of Renfrew's Public Library. This is new this year. We've got replacement of computers in the office, and this is one of those items where we've recognized in the asset management plan that the computers are at the end of the life cycle within the office, so they're up for replacement. We've seen a decrease in the OPP billing, so that's a good news story for Horton Township of this year because in past we've seen an increase on an annual basis. So I believe this might be the first time we've actually seen a decrease. In addition, we've got new software to replace our existing taxation software in the office, and that was a recommendation staff made earlier on in the year, and that's going to be one of those items that are coming out of the modernization funds. We've also got the new purchase of a tandem axle truck and plow, which will be replacing truck number 4. replacement of the roof on the sand dome, which are both items that are recognized in the asset management plan. One of the items that came out of our our day-long workshop were the tablets and softwares for the fire department. And that particularly would be coming out of the modernization funds to make their service delivery more efficient on their end. And lastly, in the recreation department, there is the proposal of the 5-year recreation agreement with the town of Renfrew. It is an increased amount for 2020. It is budgeted for. However, I'd just like to note that council has not approved entering into the 5-year agreement yet at this time. So we have the budget summary for each department, and this is specifically for the operating portion of the budget. And you can see the percentage variance from 2019 versus 2020. So specifically, we basically summarized in each department what was new or what was existing, what's coming out of reserves for any capital items. So for instance, general government, the capital I discussed about computers for the office, the server, and the taxation software. They're all coming out of reserves. We did see a slight increase in the government audit for this year, and that's just due to new staff getting used to the process and the full year-end audit portion. We go down to protection, we see the OPP billing decrease of $13,000. So that was a decrease in 3.3%, which is great. And then we see a slight increase in the transportation department. The increase in this is due to basically some of the maintenance on our existing equipment, but also a slight increase in the utilities that we're anticipating rate increases to be occurring this year. Some capital items were already mentioned for transportation. Environment is the big one for 2020. There was such a large increase in 2020 due to the curbside recycling contract. So essentially, right now, staff is recommending a 2% levy increase after growth, which is essentially reflective of the cost of living. So that's already been worked within the budget. But when we inputted the amount that came in from the curbside recycling contract, it affected the budget greatly, that it would have added an additional 4.9% levy increase to the budget. So upon discussions with council and staff, council did agree to offset that additional increase by taking some money out of the environment reserves for 2020, which ultimately would provide relief for ratepayers in 2020 due to ongoing circumstances with COVID-19 and just that increase in the recycling that we weren't expecting to see this year. So you will see that number decrease in 2021, but for this year, that's kind of where that fluctuation was. In recreation, there's some big ticket items. The increase is reflective of that rec agreement with the town of Renfrew for the 2020 portion. And additional, some capital work is going to be done this year, regrouting work of the hall, some new tables and chairs to be purchased, and a new fridge for the bar, and that's all coming from reserve money. The replacement of the rink boards, that is within our operating budget, and that's an ongoing project year after year. So we want to make sure that those boards continue to be replaced and upgraded properly. As I said before too, the library is one of the newer line items in this budget. It had previously been under general government with a small allocation, but we have upped it to $8,000 this year with the hopes of being able to enter into a service agreement with the town of Renfrew so that our ratepayers can access the public library free of charge, essentially. And again, noting fire, there are additional funding for software programs and tablets that's coming out of the modernization reserve to take a look at service delivery efficiencies and effectiveness. So just the next slide here, it's essentially the 2020 departmental percentage of operating budget. So you can see specifically for 2020, how each department is based on a percentage portion. So it's a nice little representation, but you can see that transportation is a huge chunk of that pie, whereas general government's not, is the second, and then OPP is quite substantial as well, which is nice, as I mentioned before, that we did see a decrease in that building. And following that slide is another visual representation of the operating budget, but it's actually over a 5-year span. So you can kind of take a look and see if there are any blips on the radar from year after year. So you can see under environment on the bottom, you can see that blip on the radar in 2020, and that's due to the curbside recycling contract. So that's a good little representation. And as I said before, you will see that come down in 2021 once the existing contract is taken over for the full year. Next is the 2020 proposed capital budget. This slide portrays our capital projects and purchases slated for completion this year and how they're going to be financed. And also you can see it does show some past projects which continue to be reflected in this slide as they are debenture payments. So they were capital projects or purchases that are continuing to be paid down by debenture, and we allocate that in our capital budget because it is paying down a capital project or purchase. So you can see what I've referenced here, the computer hardware, computer software, how it's being financed. We've got under our transportation, our different roads that are going to be done specifically and completed this year, our salt shed roof. The Thompson Hill Streets is sitting there as a partial only, and that's just for, hopefully we do get announced that we were successful in the funding application that we submitted earlier on in the year. But if not, then we will cross that bridge when we get to it. But that project was still discussed and reviewed that it would be continuing. And again, further down for recreation, tables, chairs, the regrouting of the hall, which has been, needs to get done, the bar renos. That was a project that was, had started in 2019, but because of the overrun into 2020, I went ahead and put in, because part of that, part of the payment for the bar renos did come out of the 2020, or were paid in 2020. So I had to allocate it in our 2020 capital budget. So following that is our 10-year reserve schedule. You will note that the years 2024 to 2028 are hidden just for the sake of being able to fit this schedule in so that it's visible. So basically this reflects actual reserves for 2020 going in and coming out. So the remainder of the years are what's forecasted in conjunction with the 10-year capital forecast. So as you can see, what's being added in 2020 and what's being utilized in 2020 for projects. And at the very bottom, you'll see what the allocations are for operating versus what they're for capital. So that's all broken down like that. And that is it for my portion of the budget. I'll hand it over to Natalie Moore, Treasurer, to discuss what the impact on a typical residential property would look like with a 2% levy increase. So Tally, I'll let you take the floor.
All right, so just to note that this is only the township portion that I am showing on the slide. It doesn't include the county or the school board's amount right now. Usually MPAC provides us with a median average property value. So in 2019, our median assessment was $233,000, which worked out to be $1272.01 for the levy portion, the township portion of the levy. And for 2020, our average assessment was $236,000, which was $1,314.16 annually. But just to further break that down to an easier understanding, it's for every 100,000 properties would see an increase of $10.92. And this is just the township portion. If we were to take into consideration the increases and decreases to the county and education rates, properties would see approximately an average increase of only $5.11 per 100,000 of assessment. So that's kind of good. And that's reflective, like I said, in the education rate went down 4.96%. The county went up 0.58, and then our levy of 2%.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Tally. So that's essentially our budget presentation. So just some closing remarks. We'd like to thank council, committees, and staff for everybody's help in preparing the 2020 budget. It was definitely a team effort. And as mentioned earlier, this presentation, along with any detailed budget package information, is available on our website, as well as paper copies in our Dropbox outside of the municipal office. So what I'll do now is I'll stop sharing my screen so that we're all back together. And if anybody now has any comments or questions, just saying if you have any specific ones that you need me to refer back to a screen, just let me know and I can easily just pull it back up so that we all have access to the same information. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Hope. Questions and concerns from council then? Deputy Mayor Campbell. Unmute yourself, Glenn, please.
That's good.
We're good.
Go ahead.
Okay, again, just listening, I know in our troubled times that we're having 2% increase. You know, we've cut it pretty lean again this year. To all departments, I'd like to thank each and every one for working with staff to come back and try and minimize the needs and the wishes. Again, we've had some pretty heavy ticket items in the past with policing costs. This year it's environment, and I was pleased to hear that the policing costs of, you know, we have a savings or at least a decrease of 13K for this year. So again, to staff and council, I think a job well done, and I know we have some ground to make up in the next couple of years for our term. So thank you.
Thanks, Len. Councillor Humphries.
Yes, just a quick question on the 10-year capital forecast on recreation. In 2021 is 165, 2022 is 325. So what is the lifespan of, is that like for major building renovations? Because it seems to go from 52,000, which is, you know, the norm, but then it jumps to 165, 325, and then 139, then it tapers off. So what is the major project to be done? You know, I know the rink boards have to be done, but what is the other rest of finance needed?
Hope you want to take that.
Sure. So with the 10-year capital forecast, essentially what we kind of refer to it for staff is a wish list item or falling line. So some of those items specifically could be the rink room, the Zamboni room, any of those bigger buildings, putting washrooms in for emergency management operations. So that some of those things have been allocated in the 10-year capital forecast. Whether they actually get done or not, when we come to that particular year, that will be through deliberations of council at that time. But they've been put in there just so that it will be a discussional item when we come to it. And that's what those numbers. You'll see the variations in each department in those numbers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Councillor Webster.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a great job, staff. We gave you direction as you requested, and you came back to where we're at with all these trying times in regards to the recycling. On to a couple things with TES. So our TES committee members and Mayor Bennett and Councillor Clear as co-chair, we've met and we've gone over lots of stuff. A lot of things were thrown at us, and I just want to, you know, ensure our ratepayers that a lot of positive things are coming out of it. We're taking care of Codyville under the capital this year. We're prepping for Whitten Road under our operational for 20 this year. That's culverts and ditching stuff, prepping it for the completion of 2021, which will be capital next year. And this keeping up with the asset management plan has been our goal, and we were, as a new counselor, that was directed to us, and we're just keeping that ball rolling. So there's no big hits down the road. And I really want to thank staff and committee members, everybody involved. Like CAO Dillabo said, that it's truly a team effort, and I want to congratulate everybody. What a job well done. Thank you, Mayor Bennett.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. Councillor Carew?
Yeah, I think the rest of the counselors, I've already said it. It's unbelievable, like where we got from 2% from just the recycling contract alone was 4.9%. And hopefully that will help next year once we get additional funding in the years come from the Blue Box funding. And then one of the I like to stress is that everyone wants to use, like in the media wants to use it, like use a percentage, but 2% is basically income was like the increase. But using the after the education and the county, for every, I think it's stressing that it's your taxes going up $5.11 for every 100,000. I think that's the major thing to stress for our taxpayers. I think hopefully the media gets using that number more than 2%, but even 2%, if you look at the previous years, and if you look at our neighboring municipalities, I think we're one of the lowest in our area. So I like to thank staff and the committee members and rest of council on a good job.
Thank you, Councillor Carew. I also want to thank staff, but I especially want to thank everyone that worked on the budget. We were a team. We didn't wander off with trying to set anybody on a different agenda. And at any time, we were all working together after some discussion to come up with a budget that I think we did a tremendous job putting together. I know I did 2 years ago tell people that I would try to keep it at zero, and I did not succeed with that, but I did not at election time ever think that we're going to see another flood last year. I didn't think we were going to see a winter like we went through that with the, I think since 1982 when I was here, that we ever dumped a salt shed twice in one winter. So we have that to deal with. We have, and then this year came along and we had the recycling to deal with at a huge increase. And I have no idea how staff actually got to where we got to today. I know we asked them to do that. And I think in all the time I have been here, there's always been a little bit of a comeback that, no, we need this much more. And that figure was achieved. So a very good job, staff, and very well done. And the highlight of it all is I think that we're meeting most of our commitments that the people want us to meet. And I especially know that the library was dear to a lot of people's hearts out there during election time to get it back. That they had use of the Renfrew Library. And at some time down the road very shortly, I would hope that we can say to them, we've achieved that and we're moving on. The other thing that we have a little bit of surprise with, but no doubt it's a surprise, is the recreation agreement with the town of Renfrew. That recreation agreement has gone up, but the cost of doing business, no matter what it is, has also increased. So we have to accept the fact that as we move forward, there is going to be a little bit of an increase for all them services. And there is no way that we can look at figures from 5 years ago and say that it's a high increase, because everything else has increased. And we have been legislated to do a lot of this stuff and provide a lot of it. So we have to do the best of our ability to provide it. Now we're dealing with the pandemic, and it's being a very, very trying time for everybody. Doug has the economic development team, and as we move forward, that is going to become a focus that we all need to work on, not just the economic development team, but everybody's going to have to help us, because we're not looking at economic development in the same light as we were at the first of this year. We need to help the small businesses that we have, and that going to take an enormous effort to keep every business open that we have in this township, and help them along the way in order to make sure that our tax base becomes stable over the next year. So it's a very big challenge, and we seem to be able to overcome them challenges very well, and I want to thank everybody for that. Any other comments? Okay.
Oh, Mayor Bennett, I think Councillor Humphreys has his hand
Oh,
up.
sorry, Councillor Humphreys, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the staff also. I just started, we figured this was questions and comments will come later, but no, you guys did a great job. Whenever we asked for stuff, it was, good ideas came from our big, our 1-day joint effort. It was a good day. We had all the committees come in. When you have more people, the more ideas, and you find that with every committee that we have, with the committee, people from the public have some really good ideas. And again, as Mayor Bennett says, with economic development, I've got a real good team. And as soon as things lighten up, we will be putting our hands out to some businesses. And I started before the pandemic, and I'm hoping to get back on track as soon as things lighten up a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Anyone else? Okay, public questions or concerns, and we had, as Hope mentioned, we did not have anybody come forward. So we hope that they can find the answers if they have some, but listening to YouTube and watching how this proceeded. So I have the recommendation, and I'll have Hope read it out, and then I'll need a mover and seconder. Oh.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if we could just back up to item number 9, the treasurer's PSAB budget report. We have to just go over that first.
Okay. And we're headed back to the budget report then. I thought that's what Natalie had already did, so. Go ahead.
All right, so the recommendation is that council adopts the Ontario Regulation 28409 report for the 2020 budget as previously circulated. Under the Municipal Act, the regulation states that the municipality may adopt a budget that excludes amortization expenses, post-employment benefits, as well as solid waste, landfill closure, and post-closure costs, provided that the municipality prepares a report about the exclusions and adopts the report by resolution.
Okay, thank you. Questions on the resolution? None? Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution then, please? Councillor Webster? Deputy Mayor Campbell? Any other discussion? All in favor? Hope, do I have to call out councillors' names for this one? Yes, okay.
You should, yep.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Humphreys,
For.
Councillor Webster,
4,
Councillor Carew,
For.
Deputy Mayor Campbell,
Or
and I'm for.
Okay.
Okay, it's carried. And it looks like on my paper, it means that this part of the meeting is now adjourned. And we will be going into a special council meeting to review the public budget. So we are adjourned now.